It's time to learn about our final theory that we're going to focus on this semester, and that is symbolic interactionism. So this is the last of the grandpa theories that we're going to look at. Grandpa meaning they're old, tried and true, and they are kind of parent theories to some of the smaller aspects of social theory that we are going to investigate as we move from one chapter and one topic to the next throughout the semester. So symbolic interactionism, maybe just from the word interaction being in this root right here, symbolic interactionism is about the micro scale. So remember, micro scale is the you and me level. And this is vital for you to understand the you and me level because in order to develop your sociological imagination, you have to be able to see connections between macro scale and micro scale. So micro scale doesn't just happen willy-nilly, haphazard all over the place. Micro scale happens because of a social structure. And so if you are a sociologist who likes symbolic interactionism the most, you first have to develop your own preference for an interpretation of social structure on the macro scale, whichever one of the theories makes sense to you about how to interpret social structure on the macro scale. You have to first decide that, and then you can employ this observational pattern. Let's look at the way that people interpret symbols and add meaning to life. What are the guidelines they use to navigate their interpersonal communication? How do they interact with each other? And how is reality created, social reality on the macro scale? How do we as individuals create it? One interaction at a time, from the bottom up, we create society and social structure. Okay, so symbolic interactionism is a micro scale observation of the you and me level, but we don't stop there. We take it a step further because when we observe that, we want it to reveal to us why macro scale structure is the way that it is. The idea behind this is that macro scale social structure is only propped up. The only reason it's like it is because you and me participate on the micro scale to continue it the way that it's always been. Or you and I can do this on the micro scale to change it into what we want it to be in the future. And so you have to have a really good understanding of that macro scale aspect of social structure before you can really understand that this is not so mysterious, this theory. It's not spooky or anything when we say we create reality. You and I create reality. We create life experiences for ourselves based on the definition we apply to a situation. If you hear somebody's voice, you can interpret from that tone of voice, you interpret the symbolic nature of the tone of voice to know whether somebody's happy with you, frustrated with you, angry with you, right? And doesn't it it elicits in you a reaction or a defense mechanism or something. So think about all the ways that we interpret different situations. We're going to go see grandma later. Are we going to dress in a certain way or not dress in a certain way so that we don't get comments about it? Are we going to hide our tattoos so we don't have some kind of reaction? How are we going to create reality in our personal lives based on the way we interpret symbols and the way that we allow interpersonal communication to happen among us, that kind of thing. However, we don't stop there. We look at a huge collection of all those observations, and we have formulated a question to try to find out why is it that there is a generation gap, maybe, or in what ways does a generation gap manifest itself? And so there used to be this thing, maybe it's still going around, that like people of a certain age don't know what texting language means, or they don't know how to text, or they text in complete sentences, like me, with punctuation and stuff like this. So is there a generation gap that you can observe? So generation gap, there's huge numbers of people in this generation and the next generation. So huge numbers of people across the population, can you observe a generation gap like grandma's attitudes about tattoos compared to your generation's attitude? Or in the workplace, is there an attitude that people, managers of a certain age and older, have this attitude or not? And does that show the generation gap across the board in the country? And so this is a difficult theory to focus on. I think I've said that 18 times, and it's primarily because if I ask you to choose a theory and apply a theory to a particular scenario or video or something that I put on the first project or the first test, the first 100-point test / project thing that we're going to do, if I ask you to do that, a lot of times in the past, students have chosen this theory because it is kind of fun to observe people on the micro scale. At least it's fun to me, and a lot of people I think agree, apparently, because they like to choose this theory to use. I give you the option of doing that, but I need to emphasize that it is the hardest one to do correctly. So when I ask you to analyze something with a particular theory, this has more steps to it than the other ones do, and therefore you have more opportunity to miss points. So choose it if you want to, but you need to work a little bit harder to understand how to apply it, just to make sure you don't miss the connection that has to be made in order from the micro to the macro in order to get it right. I really encourage you to go to the Khan Academy YouTube channel and look up symbolic interactionism, or just interactionism. Sometimes people call it just interactionism, and watch the way that presenter describes this theory, because she gives a little bit of a different not a different take. I mean, she describes the same thing, but she gives you a different example and just, uses a different way of explaining it that perhaps will clarify some questions that might be in your mind. Please read this section in chapter 1. And this goes directly with one of the learning outcomes, learning outcome number 2, that asks you to be able to apply theories. This is one of the theories we're going to ask you to apply, and it's coming up pretty soon for us to do that. You'll see that on the first test that's in another couple weeks. I'll ask you to, choose a theory and show that you can apply stuff. And so anyway, practice. Don't forget, practice, practice, practice. That's what you got to do in order to think clearly. I'll see you next week. Bye.